Who knows who I am? Anybody? Wow, people know who I am. It's only taken a year. My name is Terrison. Some people call me Salty. Some people call me T. Some people call me Little T. Some people call me T-Rex. Some people call me T-Dot. It just depends on who you are and where you're at. It's awesome to be up here again. It's been a little while since I got to talk to you guys. And it's really nice. So if you guys don't mind, over the next 20 minutes, I'll try and keep it short for you guys so you have more time for interaction and food. But it'd be really awesome if I got your attention, because this message is a little bit different than what I usually do, but it hits home nonetheless for me. So tonight, I'm talking about fear. Who's ever been afraid? Right? Yeah, raise your hands. I'm glad that you guys are conditioned to raise your hands when you hear a question. That's really nice. Because if all of you had just stared at me instead of raising your hands, I would have felt really awkward. But have you ever found yourself in a situation where you've trusted somebody almost blindly? You knew you had a ton of faith in them, and you're like, okay, I'm going to listen to what this person says because I know that they're trying to lead me in the right direction. And then after a time of whatever you were trusting them to do, starts not appearing, you're like, okay, what did this person lead me into? You start to doubt. Those little thoughts start to creep in your mind. Are they actually going to help me out? Are they actually going to do what they said? Did they actually not go to that other person? You really start to wonder, and so I did that once. You guys want to hear a really embarrassing story about when I was in 8th grade? Yeah? Okay, so that's okay. When I was in 8th grade, we were super broke, so we always went to my mom's friend's house to get our hair cut, which didn't really mean anything because my hair was super long all the time anyway. I thought that taking a half an inch off was too much. I couldn't lose that half an inch of hair. But I'm also a psychotic 8th grader, so when we get there, I have to get my hair cut first so that I could go play with the hairdresser's son, Cole, and my mom could have gab time with her friend. If I went second, they knew that I'd never leave the room. So they sent me out with Cole. Cole was a little bit older. I've been friends with Cole since I was a little kid, and I trusted him because he was like the older brother, you always trust them. They're a friend, so they don't have all those evil connotations that older brothers have. I see the Pitts looking at each other like, I know what a big brother does. Ha! But I didn't have any of those. I just trusted this kid because I'd grown up with him, and he'd never done anything wrong to me, right? So while my mom gets her hair cut, Cole says, let's take a walk in the woods. If you go this way and you cut through the woods, it'll take you back to town. If you go up that way, it's another way to get back to my house. But I've never gotten the opportunity to see if the way we just came or the way to the left will actually lead back to the house faster. He's like, so let's race. Without much more explanation, we start racing back to this house. Guys, I'd never been on that path in my entire life, and I was stoked. I knew that I could beat him purely because the older kid said that I couldn't, right? And so we start running full force ahead. I'd kind of blocked out anything else he'd said because I was really just focused on winning this, and I knew that I could get there, right? So I start jumping over everything, right? I'm jumping over fences. I'm running through cow pastures. I'm avoiding cows and cow patties. All of a sudden, it's an hour past time, and I should have been there in 10 minutes, and I go, okay, this is really bad. What am I supposed to do? So I see a mobile home, and I go up and I knock on the door. Nobody's there. And I look inside, and it's very clear that this place is no longer inhabited. There's nobody in it. It already had no trespassing signs that I was ignoring because I needed to figure out how to get home. And so I follow their driveway for what seems like forever, and finally I find a main road. And I wave down this giant black SUV. FYI, unless you absolutely have to, don't flag down a giant black SUV. That and white vans are not a good idea. Just saying. So, luckily enough, this lady was kind enough to take me back to my hairdresser's house. And in this time of an hour that I was trying to find my way back, fear kicks in, adrenaline is like, we're going this way. Let me tunnel vision you this way, right? I'd run 5 miles in the wrong direction. It took us 15 minutes in a car to get back, but I'd run 5 miles in the wrong direction. And so my mom wanted to strangle me. I wanted to cry. Cole was in so much trouble that he didn't know what to do with. And it was all because I was so focused on getting there that I had missed the part where he said, when you see the pine trees, turn left, and the house is right there. Run blindly past the pine trees and jump the fence. If that tells you anything about who I am, I mean, I've done that several times metaphorically since. So, needless to say, that day was a learning lesson for right now, because I don't think I've ever owned up to that story in my entire life. FYI, don't try and race through woods you don't know, even guys. I can see you looking at your friends. So, it's a little bit like, if you want to hear a really expanded metaphor, it's a little bit like the people in 1 Thessalonians, right? So Paul would come to these people and told them all these great things. They'd come to know Christ. They were really kind of forming as baby Christians, right? They were new to their faith. And then all of a sudden, Paul got kicked out of the city. And they were like, okay, well, this is different, but we can still figure this out, right? Well, then Paul and Silas and these people started getting persecuted, and they're like, wow, he said all these things. I wonder what parts of these things we just heard wrong or weren't true. They started really questioning what he had to say about it. They started kind of doubting what they believed. They kind of started being afraid for their lives, being afraid for their friends, their futures, because they didn't see what Christ was doing. They only saw what Paul was going through in that time, and Paul wasn't having a great time of it. Now, 2 Thessalonians, he comes back and he's like, hey guys, let me re-explain this so that you understand it. But the time in between those two books, they were really trying to figure it out for themselves. And so while they're questioning all of this, what creeps in? Fear, doubt, uncertainty, the same things that started creeping into my mind as soon as I started running in the wrong direction, and I really had too much of a pride problem to go back and be like, okay, I can just trace that trail back, and too much of a doubt problem to hear what he had told me to do and what direction to go, right? And so as they go through that, it's just fear. It's fear all the time, right? And that's the same thing in today, right? A lot of us struggle with anxiety. I don't know about anybody else, but I'm afraid to turn on the TV because I don't want to watch the news, right? We have fear in our schools about what people are going to think, what people are going to do. We have fear of failure. We don't want to mess up or look like we did anything wrong. We have fear of love. We don't want to get hurt by people. We don't want to step out in that and really let somebody else love on us. And we have fear of just opening up to chances, like taking the chance to go to a school out of our comfort zone, or try a sports team or a drama club. We're afraid of trying these different things because of what's going to happen. And at the end of the day, we end up letting fear rob us of our experiences and our joys and helping people around us and seeing the world, because we'd rather stay safe and secure in what we think we know instead of going after those things, right? Now, fear. I'm not telling you to not be afraid. Fear is something that's tangible. Fear is a real emotion. Fear is legitimate, and even the bravest people, at some point or another, are going to experience fear. Nobody is devoid of that emotion. Nobody gets to skip that part of life. It can be fear of family situations, fear of the health of our loved ones, fear of the big bully at school, or how we're going to get out of small-town West Virginia, or hopefully how we're going to fix small-town West Virginia and stay, right? Fear of never finding your soulmate. It's all these different things, and fear is understandable, but it's what we do with the fear that matters. It's what we decide to act as in that time that matters. Are we going to let it overcome us? Are we going to live in our corner, in our safe little bubble, or are we going to use it as fuel to go out and to experience different things with the knowledge that that fear compels us, right? And so Paul and Silas and a lot of the other early missionaries, and even missionaries now, feel fear. They experience fear. Paul was persecuted. Silas was persecuted. I'm persecuted. Just kidding. I'm not persecuted like they were. But the Son of God was persecuted, and I guarantee you that he felt fear when he was hanging on a cross for us, right? He knew what was coming, and he was still afraid of it. He begged to get out of it, but he knew that it was what needed to happen. But it's when we're so blinded by the fear, so blinded by what could happen, what will happen, that we miss the beauty of this world, right? We miss the joys of this world. We miss the opportunities and the blessings that come through stepping out of our comfort zone, that come from serving or doing things that we're not used to. And it's in those times that fear knocks on the door. We get out of bed, we get ready, we leave. Fear joins us. He's right next to us all day. Oh, don't talk to that person. They might think this. Don't do that. That's a really bad idea. Not because it's actually a bad idea, but because you're uncomfortable with it, right? It could be joining a new club. It could be confronting somebody. Any of those things, right? And eventually, what you do is you go from letting fear run your life when you leave the door, right, to inviting fear into the house, to not wanting to get out of bed because fear meets you when your feet hit the ground, right? And then eventually, fear is right next to you, and you don't want to wake up. And it's when we let those things happen, when we let fear guide us and go, okay, you're going to stay in this little path for the rest of your life. You're going to stay in this little corner for the rest of your life. That it makes it a whole lot harder for Jesus to get a hold of your heart, for him to propel you in the ways that he wants you to go, because you're going, no, I want to stay right here. This is where I'm at. I want to stay right here, Jesus. I'm not going to let anything else happen. It's not safe. It's not good. This is where I'm staying, right here. And even though God can use that, he can guide us in those ways, he helps other people and ourselves in that, it's still not where he hopes for us to be, right? He wants us to put aside fear and to follow him in trust and love, not be afraid of trust and love, right? And so, I say that, and they're really great words, but in all reality, I've spent a lot of my time in the fear of what's going to happen and running towards what I think God wants, because I think everything else is scary, instead of actually listening to what he wants, right? So I'm preaching to myself right now. Letting fear rule your life makes it a lot harder to follow Jesus and what he wants, because a lot of the things that he wants us to do look like fear, but they end up being beautiful opportunities and experiences and things that you never thought you would do. So Gandhi once said, the enemy is fear. We think it's hate, but it's actually fear. Because behind most hate, behind most prejudice is fear as well. So, thankfully, Paul doesn't leave the Thessalonians to worry, right? At first, he steps back, and right before Thessalonians 5, where all of this is coming out of, he talks in Thessalonians 4 about making sure who you are, you know who you are. You're informed about death, you're informed about life, you're informed about how being a Christian is different than being a non-Christian when we attend to matters of life and death. Because we will live with Christ forever at the end of the day, right? And we get to rest in that assurance, and everybody that comes alongside Christ is going to rest in that assurance too. So we get to live in a light that we get to share with people that are mourning in darkness, that don't know that don't have that hope. And so that's why we leave our future in the hands of the man who commands the sky, woman, thing, deity, being, God, that commands the sky, the tides, in our lives in a really epic way, right? Our hopes and fears about love, a better future, stability, and just about anything else can find rest in his knowledgeable arms, right? And that's just as much of a statement for myself as for you guys. Because when Paul is pressing into these people, he's writing letters, right? But he is still struggling in his own way, and they're still struggling in their own way. And at the end of the day, the main thing that we can rest on is the fact that Jesus Christ died for us, lives for us, and saved us so that we don't have to worry about what happens. We don't have to worry about what tomorrow holds or today holds, because he has it. He's planning it. He's seeing it already. He saw it 2,000 years ago, and he's going to be seeing it when we go, but this happened in heaven, right? And so, a random story, another story for you guys. This one's a little less funny. But most of you know that I've been to Haiti several times, 5, probably 6 next year. And because of a lot of things that I've done in Haiti that were way sketchier than I care to complain, I've faced death and extreme injury and a lot of really crazy situations. Never with Don. Go with Don. He's safe. Go with Don if you ever go to Haiti. Don't go with me. I do stupid things. But at least it was just him, right? But for real, I've caught illnesses that swelled my throat shut, and I had 104-degree fever in a 101-degree temperature, and that is really not fun, right? I've held a baby that was really sick and the next day was dead. I've had guns pointed at me on several occasions, going into places where white people are not supposed to be. I've had encounters with voodoo priests. I've gotten a lot of things, just encountered a lot of things that in any other situation, and without Jesus could have been really, really bad, right? And one of the most heartbreaking, I've met time and time again this family in the mountains who we've shared the gospel with, right? They know who Jesus is and what he's about, but a voodoo priest saved their daughter when she was a baby. And because of that, the voodoo priest has a hold on their family, and they're afraid to believe in Jesus because they don't know what the voodoo priest will do to their daughter if they do. So they go, we want to believe, we want to believe, we want to believe. And they can't, right? They're not allowed to. And so all of these things are things that at the end of the day, you're like, okay, this could be very well a reason why I never leave the country, right? I never leave my bed again. I can't do this. It's not safe. I'm not protected. I'm scared, right? But there's 1,000 reasons that I could rack up as to why to never go back. There's 1,000 reasons that I could rack up as to why I never want to leave my bed, right? Day-to-day grand adventures, it's all the same at the end of the day. If we trust fear more than we trust Jesus, we're going to end up on this tiny little path that leads us very close to nowhere, right? He can still use it, but it's not anything compared to what he wants to do. And that's not to say that in this life it's going to be all fine and dandy. That's not to say that maybe one day I don't die in Haiti. Who knows? Maybe I die when I leave the parking lot. I sure hope not, but at least I'd be hanging with Jesus, right? We're still going to experience hardship and suffering, persecution, pain. It's hard to say it, right? Because right now I'm not feeling it, but I know it's coming, right? We all go through it. We're all human. And sometimes fear is more crippling than a gunshot, right? We stand and we don't know where to go. We don't know where to turn because at that moment, it hurts more to decide what to do than to actually move, right? But that's when we can't let fear overtake the trust in Jesus. We can't let the little voices overtake what God has already said about us. And more than anything, we can't let him keep us from sharing our light with people that don't have light, because that's the ultimate goal, right? We want to see more people in heaven and less people in hell, but if we're not sharing that light because we're afraid of something, fear, that comes out of darkness, then it's a lot harder for other people to see the light in us. At the end of the day, the moral of the story is this, that in the first story, I was not in any imminent danger, right? Other than maybe the black SUV, which was like a soccer mom. But I was not in any imminent danger. But I was so scared that I didn't pay attention to my surroundings, and I didn't pay attention to what Cole had told me, right? I ran literally into the middle of nowhere. I let fear guide me into the middle of nowhere. And he still used it for good, right? God gave me a really awesome story to use a decade later for all of you to laugh at me, and that's just really fun. But in that moment, I did not see any good of it. I got grounded, I didn't get to go outside, and it was all because I let fear take hold of what I was doing. But many years later, I got to go to Haiti, and I knew that in those moments where there was imminent danger, where there was real things to be afraid of, that even though I was feeling fear, that wasn't what I was living out of, because I knew that at the end of the day, Jesus was either going to bring me safely home or he was going to bring me back to live with him. And so both of those are kind of win-win situations, right? I don't have to cower in the fact of never going back, because either way, I'm pretty stoked. Seeing Jesus sooner is not what I plan, obviously, but if it happens, it's not a bad thing, right? And so, like I said, he can still use it for good, but that's not what he wants to do with it, right? He wants somebody that goes, okay, I know there's fear, I know I have hesitations, but God, I'm following you. I want what you want, I want the plan that you have. And when we shield our hearts with faith and love and not from faith and love, and we protect ourselves with hope and salvation, instead of trying to protect ourselves by closing off and keeping hope and love from ourselves and closing off the world and the people that care about us, it's then that it's a lot harder for anybody to get through. So I urge you guys, choose to live, right? Choose to live with eyes wide open and feel that fear, right? Listen to it when it says, hey, maybe that's not a good idea, but don't be conquered from it when you know that it's something that God would love for you to do, right? If it's coming here and serving when we have Thanksgiving basket distributions, or if it's going to retreat and really worshiping God and going, okay, God, I'm letting all of this go, that's really scary, right? Sometimes that's more scary than talking to strangers. But whatever it is, put that fear aside to the best of your ability. Know that that is not what rules you, that the God of the universe rules you. And put it back in a respectable place where Christ is your center, right? So you're like, okay, cool. That's a lot of really great words put together kind of in a pretty way. But what does that actually mean for me? And so at the end of the day, there's an acronym, and I'm cheesy, and I'm going to give you an acronym because I like it. And if you guys want it afterwards, you can have it. But it's called the APTAT. And it's admit and know that you can't really do anything about it. That sucks to admit, but we are powerless to change most of our circumstances. Pray. Pray about the issue hard. Pray about what's going on, what's going to happen, what we see and what we think is going on, and all of that, and expect that God's going to be in that, right? And then T, the hard one, right? Trust. Trust that whatever God's doing in it, even if it's not what we expect to do in it, him to do in it, he's still in control of it. And lastly, thank him. Thank him for being God, and for being in control, and for creating you, and for creating the universe, and the pretty bunnies that I may or may not have accidentally hit on the road. Thank him for all the really pretty things that he does, right? For the flowers and the birds, and the fact that the sun really does rise every single morning. And after all of that, just realize and remember that at the end of it all, he's still good, right? I'm going to leave you guys with 10 nifty verses. And like I said, if you want these later, you can grab them. If not, that's great. You must have a really good memory, because 10 verses is a lot to memorize. But when you're stuck on the trust part, when you're not sure how to trust him, right, his word is usually the last place that you can go, and the first place you should go. And it's only because of the verses and the words that I know that in those moments where I was really faced with my own morality or the morality of other people, I knew where I could stand and who I could trust. So, first on Isaiah 41:10, fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you, I will help you, I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. Philippians 4:19, my God will supply every need of yours according to his riches and glory in Jesus Christ. 2 Corinthians 9:8, God is able to make all grace abound to you, so that having all sufficiency in all things at all times, you may abound in every good work. Hebrews 13:5-6, I will never leave you nor forsake you. So we can say confidently that the Lord is my helper. I will not fear what man can do to me. The Lord God is a sun and shield. The Lord bestows favor and honor. No good thing does he withhold from those who walk upright. Psalm 84:11. Romans 8:32. He who did not spare his own son, but gave him up for us all, how will he not also with him graciously give us all things? Psalms 23:6, surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all of the days of my life. James 4:7, resist the devil and he will flee from you. 2 Corinthians 12:9, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in my weakness. And last one, Psalms 50:15, call upon me in the day of trouble. I will deliver you and you shall glorify me. So each time that you choose hope over fear, remember that in 1 Thessalonians, Paul asks us to do one thing with that. He asks us that when we remember to show hope over fear, that we should encourage one another and build each other up. I know you guys are already doing that, but it really helps out. You know, when you go, hey, I was really struggling with this, or I was really afraid of this, but I looked to this verse, I looked to this person, I looked at what God was doing, and went, wow, I'm really encouraged by this. And you share that story, and you share that verse, and you share the testimony that comes out of that. Somebody else may be in the exact same situation, and you build them up without even knowing that they need it. And that's a really incredible opportunity, guys. That's an opportunity that you'll have countless times, and you never know when somebody else needs it. So, you guys are done. Let me pray real quick, and then I'm sure we have awesome food, aka corn dogs.